When did you know that you wanted to have your own coffee shop?
We are having a good time most of the time.
I was telling a younger person, like really eager to start a business, I would say,
welcome to the podcast. This is my lovely wife, Chelsea, and my partner in crime here at the Lingleville Country Store. We have the Lingleville Country Store, and we've done blackjacks, and we have just followed the direction of the Lord and followed the direction of our hearts. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work a lot of times, especially with 5 kids. Between volleyball and basketball and football and cheerleading, we are busy, but we are having a good time most of the time.
no, we are.
Yeah.
I don't think we'd have it any other way.
So I'm here pretty much daily. And Chelsea is here every once in a while, but she does a lot with the books and a lot with
accounting,
with the behind the scenes.
He makes the money, I count the money. It's work. It's a good deal for
And I'm like, hey babe, can I buy this thing?
And I'm like, no.
She's like, no. So yeah, all that said, it takes both sides to make it happen. And so
yeah, I think that's funny because a couple years ago he got asked to speak for like a class at the college at Tarleton, and I got to talk to the professor after, and he was saying you did such a good job, but he was like, just the Lord will lead you and have faith and give it all to God, and I was like, that's so funny because it's so Lance, but like somebody's got to pay payroll and taxes and do inventory and
it'll get done, right?
So if Lance comes to speak at your college, you're gonna get probably one half of the business world, and he is definitely he's entrepreneurial. We both are, but he is the visionary, big picture, and he is so about community and taking care of his employees and taking care of his customers. And that's a huge part of your business.
It's more like a manager and less like an owner, I would say. But those kids at Tarleton, they probably needed a good dose of the other side. They probably get tons of like financial
spreadsheets.
Yeah, and honestly, they get that. And I just thought, I'm gonna bring the fun side, because there is a rewarding fun side. It's not always, There's gonna be times where, if you have your own business, you're gonna hate it and you're gonna have to go to work anyway because that's just what you got to do if you want to be open tomorrow. But at the same time, it's also very rewarding. You get to experience a lot of good throughout it, not just during the bad times. So yeah, I was asking Chelsea earlier, if when we first met, if we ever thought we would have a coffee shop or that we would even be here in Lingleville. And the answer was like, heck no, like this was nowhere on the horizon. So we actually met in high school. We're high school sweethearts.
I was in junior high.
Oh, well, junior high. Well, we weren't dating then. Yeah, so.
We was dating. We couldn't even drive when we were dating.
Yeah.
Couldn't go anywhere.
So I was a sophomore in high school. She was a freshman.
I was in 8th grade when we met.
Yeah,
and you were a
grade.
sophomore.
Yeah.
And then we were official. We were official.
Yeah.
We weren't Facebook official because there was no Facebook then.
There was MySpace, but it was
we
just
were
getting
MySpace.
started.
Maybe we were MySpace official.
MySpace, man.
I don't know. That was...
The porn got him. What was the guy's name? Tom or whatever? What was the guy's name?
I don't know.
Poor guy. Anyway, so yeah, MySpace times. This was like pre everybody having a cell phone. So like, I didn't have a cell phone in high school.
He wrote me letters.
Yeah, we wrote letters instead of text. That's how old we really are. We started dating. I was a junior in high school. She was a freshman, and yeah, the rest is history.
I didn't even actually like coffee ever. My dad drank a ton of coffee. He still does. He can like take an afternoon nap and wake up and have a couple cups of coffee.
But now he has a grinder in his kitchen.
Well, we've snobbed him out.
And he gets good coffee and he grinds it up.
It's, yeah. I mean, you've brought so much coffee culture to my side of the family. So thank you.
I really feel like, you know, the people around me, I'm going to take care of them. And if they're drinking bad coffee, I'm going to do everything that I can to remedy that. So the first grinder they had was my personal grinder. I was like, listen, just take this, find some whole bean coffee. You have to stop living like this. So yeah, now he likes his good coffee. But that said, I didn't like coffee. I had like this old school, like South Louisiana coffee milk that my grandpa used to make us when we were kids. And like literally he had this old tin pot and he would pour some of his community coffee in there, like the dark roast community coffee. And he would pour milk in there and then bring it to a simmer with a bunch of sugar in it. And he would bring it to us when we were kids while we're sitting like, you know, in the living room watching cartoons at his house. And so that was with biscuits, with like biscuits and jelly. So that's my first coffee experience. So it was just like set up from day one that I should love coffee, because every time I smelled it, it took me back to my grandpa's living room, you know, and Saturday morning cartoons. So that's a lot of fun. But I didn't really like coffee until I started working at the big Starbucks after high school. And then I finally tried a coffee one day that I was telling Jared, like, I tasted the flavor notes and I was like, you guys aren't lying. You're telling the truth. There's actually these flavor notes in here. So I think it was like blueberry or something like that, some crazy flavor note that I never thought belonged in coffee. And then I understood, like, oh, this is what they're talking about. And I've been like head over heels.
Yeah, he fell in love for sure. And then he was obsessed. And then he was like, you have to drink coffee. So then he would make like a latte and he'd put a tiny bit of espresso and a lot of sugar and a lot of milk. And I'd be like, oh, I can do that. Or he'd make a frappuccino.
Yeah.
And then he would just slowly like add more coffee, less sugar, more coffee. And then, you know, I became also a believer.
Yeah. And as the years continued, you know, you get better at your craft, you get better at brewing coffee. I feel like if you're watching this, you're probably pretty much in it. The more you make coffee, the better you get at it. And over the years, I've really honed it to where I feel like I can make a batch of coffee that's black that anybody will like. And so, you know, I've handed you some black coffees. Even now, you like a little cream and sugar in your coffee, and
I don't really like sugar in it anymore.
Yeah,
I don't know why, but I
cream.
love cream milk. So that's like,
we do a lot of raw milk though.
That's my jam. Is just a little milk and a splash of coffee.
Yeah.
I mean a splash of milk in my coffee.
So we partner with a company right now that's called Armagh Creamery, and they're actually just like right up the road, and they're just awesome people. They're actually really close friends of ours, and they asked us like, hey, can we do a raw milk drop point? So like regulations in Texas prohibit dairies from selling milk on the open market. They have to sell it direct. So you have to buy it directly from them. I guess they can bring it to like a drop point. So we've become a drop point for them, and they do yogurt and like specialty cheese like brie and some other stuff. We started carrying their stuff, not carrying it, but at least like making it available to customers. So we have like a little sign up sheet. You can call them, get set up, you prepay, and they bring your raw milk. So yeah, we love raw milk. It's awesome stuff. I know a lot of people are like probably freaking out right now, like saying it's dangerous or whatever, but yeah, we've been drinking it for years, and you know, we haven't died yet. But maybe one day we'll die.
Nah.
Probably not though. Me and Chelsea are the funniest people we know. Sometimes we just get together and we just laugh at our own jokes.
Sometimes.
Like right now. So anyway, so that's kind of our start in coffee, and then you know, our start, how we met.
When did you know that you wanted to have your own coffee shop?
So I would say I was working at Starbucks, And like every Starbucks employee, you think to yourself, gosh, I wish I just had my own coffee shop. And so I was thinking that one day with the rest of everybody, and I thought, yeah, I'm gonna do this. And so then I I don't know, I would say I commit a little bit more than a lot of people. And so I talked to Chelsea and I said, I wanna get more into coffee. And at this point, honestly, like, I'll never like bash Starbucks. I mean, it has its like corporate vibe to it, even when you're working there, and it makes it tough, because it's all like top down. But I would say they got me started in quality coffee. They got me started on the foundations that I needed to get started. And they kind of raised me in the specialty coffee world.
Also, I feel like they have brought up what is now our customer base. We're like brought up on Starbucks.
Right.
But then are of honing in, wanting something a little more craft, a little more small town, a little more less corporate.
Yeah. I feel like we're doing what Starbucks would love to do.
But they had a bigger mission. Which is bringing specialty coffee to the masses.
Yeah, and they brought specialty coffee to the United States and maybe to the rest of the civilized world, honestly. Howard Schultz had this trip to Italy, and he was a printer salesman, and the guy had this experience with specialty coffee, and all of a sudden he said, hey, I can sell this because I believe in it. And then he bought Starbucks from these little craft people who were just roasting coffee. He started the first shops, and like he brought espresso to the United States, which, good job, Howard Schultz. I'll give that one to you. Do I agree with you politically? No, probably not. But hey, we all got our stuff, we all got our stuff.
When did you know that you were gonna start a coffee shop?
I would say in the training, Starbucks used to, at least, I don't know if they still do because I haven't been there in a long time, maybe 10 years. They would train you for free. So in my mind, I was like, this is free education. This is something that I want to know about. And so I went through what they used to call, and I guess they still call, their Black Apron program, where they teach you the depths about Starbucks coffee and you become like an expert in Starbucks coffee. Like, all the flavor notes, the nuances of how their coffee program works from the ground up. And then they talked a little bit about roasting and a little bit about farming, and they were like, okay, good job. Here's your Black Apron. Go sell coffee for us. And I was content with that for a long time, but I really wanted to know more because it just keeps going. And so, you getting that buzz? He's like, Jared's our video ninja over here. He's great. Hey, Jared. So yeah, I would say I wanted to know more, and so we're living on like, I don't know, maybe like $15,000 a year. And I know your jaw is like dropping on the ground, and half of you guys are even calling me a liar. We were living on $15,000 a year. I found a little old like shack that was right next to campus, and we were living in there.
Our rent was $350 a month.
And that was low for then. That was like, it was nothing.
Well, it was like 2008, 2007, 2008.
Yeah, so we were renting from a guy who has a lot of rent houses. I was riding my bike down the road and I thought, oh, here's a place for rent, So I called them $350 a month. I was like, I'll take it.
Riding bikes a lot to save gas money.
Yeah. So that's the thing about being poor is, you live to your means, right? You just cut expenses.
You're like a goldfish. You're gonna fill up your bowl.
Yeah.
But you're not gonna outgrow your bowl because you can't.
You can't.
Right?
Yeah. So if it means, cutting those extra trips, if it means cutting out a cell phone, if it means we can't go out to dinner, whatever it was, we were like, we were 21 years old, 20 years old.
With a baby.
It's okay to be poor then. I feel like that's
Good for you.
That's a big sham right now, is like people think that they have to have a white picket fence and a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house on 10 acres when they're 25. And you just don't. You don't need that.
Yeah.
You know, you need to be poor for a while.
Need to be poor.
It's good. It was good for us. We got married early. We were poor. It was great. I would not take it back. I really wouldn't. So yeah, we were living on nothing. And I told Chelsea, hey, I want to get a coffee roaster and start roasting coffee on the side. And I don't know if you ever priced coffee roasters, but they're not cheap. They're not cheap at all.
But the beauty of being poor is, as a wife, you can say, we don't have the money for that, so I don't know how you're going to buy it, but you're going to have to come up with the money.
I'm not killing your dreams. Your paycheck is. This is where I feel like our Christian walk and our relationship with God comes in, because I feel like we have like this connection with God Almighty, and He is, you know, all-knowing. So we just ask Him,
yeah,
and do what He says. And so
if you want to spend like $6,000-$7,000, just tell your wife God said, and
yeah, or not even that. You don't have to say God said. All she has to say is, well, maybe you just need to pray about that. And I said, okay. And she said, if God will give us the money, which was like, I don't know, like 20% of our yearly income.
It was more. It was $6,000.
She just said, if God gives us the money,
you can do whatever you want.
And I said, okay, challenge accepted, you know? And it must have been, I don't know.
I think it was within a month.
Within the month, we had a huge hailstorm roll through, Texas hailstorm roll through, damaged my piece
very
of crap
old, very
BT
old
Cruiser just enough to where it had damage all over it, but you couldn't really see it. And I mean, it was just beautiful. Insurance showed up, and I thought, oh, we're not going to get hardly anything from this. And they wrote us a check for $100 over the amount of the roaster and the whole coffee business. And so, so I was like, hey, babe, this is a sign. This is a sign. Let's do this.
I was like, we've never had this much money before.
And now you're just going to blow it. Yeah. And so, yeah, that was the beginning of the coffee journey outside of Starbucks. I drove to Houston. I picked up this old school Ambex roaster from this guy, all his bags, all his inventory of coffee, everything, and came back, set it up in a shop right outside the house.
So imagine this. Yeah. We told you we were poor. We lived in a shack. Well, this shack had a back room that was really random, looked like a lab, may have been a lab. At once. I think it might have been a meth lab.
People prior to us got busted for meth there.
I'm not sure. We don't know that. We
so
can't confirm.
I hope that's not the truth, but
we don't know.
You know, it's very possible. If you saw this house, you would say, yeah, probably.
It was set up. So we put that roaster back there.
Yep.
And he would roast, and he vented it out, and
the enemy meant for evil.
The college, the campus police.
So yeah, I'm roasting coffee, right? I've got the vent for the coffee going out the window. I just open up the window and just throw the dryer vent thing out and just let it, you know, get out. But it's smoky, and it smells kind of like popcorn popping, or like there's a really unique smell to roasted coffee. It doesn't smell like coffee like you would think in a bag.
Yeah. And
so the entire parking lot of the college was just like fog, just this haze of smoke sitting over it when I would roast, because I don't know if it was how the buildings were, but it didn't let a lot of wind through, and so it just sat. And so people would stop by all the time and just like poke their head through the window that the vent was hanging out and say, what are you doing in there, you know? And then I'd talk.
What are you cooking back here?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting times. And so I just retailed coffee kind of around town. And then there was a nonprofit company that started up. This was about the time that a guy from our church started sourcing coffee from Southwest China, where he had some ties. And he said, hey, will you roast the coffee here in the States for us? And I was like, sure. So like I had a client, and so I was just roasting coffee for him. And it was going really good. I thought it was going good. It was a lot of work. It did turn into really busy there for a little while with roasting. And then I'm trying to think. I roasted all the way till what year? What year was it?
Beginning of 2013, I think.
Okay.
So by 2012, we had our third child. So we had a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a newborn.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Those dynamics will give you some perspective in how you're running your life. So yeah, between roasting, helping out with music at church,
and at the college.
Yeah, and I was doing music.
Gigging,
so
and camp.
so I started doing music in high school as well, actually in junior high, and I just do music at the church here and there, and then we started gigging for like these camps and doing retreat weekends, and we had just a little band that would run around, and it was a lot of fun. It was good. We didn't make any money or anything like that. It was just enough maybe to cover the gas to get there. But
somebody was having fun.
Yeah, I was having a great time. Chelsea was taking care of the kids for me. So yeah, it was like a wake-up call after kid number 3, when we just had, we'd have these like meltdown fights. Maybe I'm a little bit too busy. So then I had to cut some stuff down, get responsible. I really thought all this stuff is just not worth it if I come home and my marriage, my family is falling apart.
Yeah, I think that's a really important topic for people who want to do a business and want to start a business, and there's something that feels really good and exciting about being an entrepreneur, but in a lot of ways it's like having another baby, or like sometimes I felt like the extra things he did was almost a little bit like the other, like he was married to those things. And so...
Well, it takes commitment. You have to be committed to them,
Yeah. And I think that, Starbucks was his job, and it was a lot of work. And then the gigging was his thing. I'm not musical. And I could, even if I was, I couldn't. We had a home and a family and kids. And then the coffee definitely was all him. And so I think that, sometimes you want to just like quick start and quick growth and just launch out. And, I feel like for us in that season, the Lord was really faithful to prune back the things that weren't really bearing good fruit, And I think that business owners, not that making money is the best fruit, but golly, if you're going to spend the time, you should make some money. And so, yeah. I mean, that's like another thing is like people get on the high of, oh, I want to do this great thing. I want to do this work. I want to do this business. But you can't justify the money for the hours that you're gone from your home and your family. Yeah. And that's really something to take into consideration. Yeah.
And I think there's a whole nother side to that too, where you get this almost this public recognition that like, oh, like that person, he's successful, or like, oh, that person owns a business, or that person, he's a musician in a band. And it's really, I would say, false if everything underneath it is just getting more rotten. Well, and it's strange. It's just waiting to collapse, all of it, Yeah. And I feel like, and it's like I always say, I feel like we almost had like a cheat to the system because we've had this supernatural guidance of God really directing us. And, the Bible says, in all your ways acknowledge him and he will guide your paths. And I really feel like that's what we get when we just acknowledge him in whatever we're doing. We just ask, and then we're okay with the outcome.
Yeah, but I don't think even in those, especially in those early years and even now, like we don't always get it right. You know, we're still learning. And so it took really like burning out. I remember having the conversation. I was actually pregnant with our third, and I had 2 very small children, and I had just kind of let things go a lot. And one of the ways I coped, I remember saying in my mind, it's okay. I don't need Lance. Like, I don't need him. And I remember just being alone, maybe in the shower or something, and the Holy Spirit was like, that's not good. Like, that's not how I want you to think. That's not going to keep you vulnerable. That's not going to keep you connected, right? And so that conversation, when we finally had to sit down, like, come to Jesus, was like, this is what I'm struggling with, is this lie that I don't need you here. And that's how I'm going to cope with you never, ever being here and doing all these things apart from me and the kids. And I just, asked him, like, are you okay with me believing long term that I don't need you around? Because I feel like that's going to result in something that's not good, that doesn't keep our marriage together.
Well, if I'm gone all the time too, that's the inevitable, is either she learns how to not need me or I become present. Right. It's one or the other, there's no choice. And I wasn't willing to accept, her just saying, well, I don't need you anymore. Because that would be a devastating blow to our marriage, I think. I just feel like that's supposed to be number one commitment. Yeah.
And I think, when you're married, in a lot of ways, like, you need the Lord, and it's okay to cope day in and day out and not be needy, but like, I still need you. I need you for my growth. I need you for our kids need you, like, our home needs you in it. And I need help, and I'm here to help you, and you need me. And so that was a big turning point, was just kind of recognizing this small little lie that I was using to resolve my pain and my loneliness and to cope.
Yeah. I think that's a big pitfall for people who especially are just starting businesses. You have to put in so much time that you neglect everything else around you. And there are times where you have to bust your butt and put in the overtime, but it's really a team thing. So if we go in this thing together and with the Lord, and the Lord says yes, we say yes, then it's going to be okay when we have to put in the overtime. But if it's just one of us, if it's just me, then there's going to be a lot of resentment that builds up. There's going to be a lot of, not good feelings. Somebody's going to get left out and something's going to break. And it's not worth your family. It's not worth your family. And even for the people who are single, it's not worth your life, laying down your entire life for something like this. This store and even our other store, it came about. We started it very organically. We didn't overcommit. I don't feel like, it's just kind of become.
But that was after everything was pruned back.
Yeah.
It felt like everything was taken away. There was no more, sold the roaster. There was no more roasting. There was no more, and we weren't like on the brink of divorce, but we were in the baby stage of really a disconnection.
Of resentment, yeah.
Resentment and disconnection.
Yeah.
And so
divorce was never really an option. We kind of left that out when we left that out of our vows when we got married. But, I would say through the smaller things, because we were faithful with a lot of the smaller things, and after making the mistakes, we took the conflict in our marriage and made it productive. And so instead of fighting against each other, or instead of me fighting against Chelsea, I decided just to be humble and say, okay, I need to say no to some things. And that's when I stepped out of a lot of the music. I still did the roasting for a while, but then
not a full year.
But then I stepped out of that too. I ended up selling the roaster. I actually sold the roaster for what I bought it for, or actually maybe more. I think I sold it for maybe more. than I bought it for. And so that was a score. We didn't lose the money because I bought it used. So yeah, that's another thing. Not only did I get a roaster, but around this time, the Lord was kind of speaking to both of us. Hey, one day you're going to have a coffee shop. By this point, I had already left Starbucks, I think.
I think it was a little before you left Starbucks, but you were on your way out. Especially, you were already out emotionally, I think.
Yeah. So I got kind of into the management portion of it, and it was just not my cup of tea anymore. It was a lot less about the coffee and more about just checking the boxes. And I'm just not really a box checker. I want to get my hands dirty, and I want to connect with people. And so I was kind of on my way out, all around kind of the same, probably within a year or two. We're selling the roaster. I'm buying equipment. So like this machine over here that we have, it's like a 3-group, like huge espresso machine. That was my machine at the house. I had it in the shop, and I would use it when I was roasting for cupping, and I would make espresso and make lattes for Chelsea in the morning sometimes. So I bought that. We had some like refrigerators, I had some chairs, some little things that I was slowly stockpiling these larger pieces of equipment that I knew that I would need one day.
We had learned that kind of from a friend who remodeled houses. And I remember him telling us, he'd said, well, if I find a good deal or I find something on Craigslist for like nothing, I get it. I just get it because I'm going to use it. Remodeling house is what I want to do.
Yeah. So
I might get, 3,000 square feet of this flooring. And he was like, I just get it before I need it. And then because it's such a good deal. And I don't want to get up to this house and be desperate for an item. And so he had a little place he stored some stuff. And I remember thinking, that's smart. Like we know what God said. We know Lance wants a coffee shop one day. But we really, after kind of like this third child breakdown of everything, it was like, but not until our kids are grown.
Yeah, we were okay with waiting. And a whole nother thing is that
we died to it.
Because we were poor too, I feel like we understood how not to spend money, I think, because we were really used to really tightening the belt up and not...
Unless there's a great deal on an espresso machine.
Unless there's a great deal on an espresso machine. We would kind of save up, and then we would buy, this commitment almost to this I don't know, this dream that was kind of spoken to us that like, hey, you're going to do this one day. And so as we're kind of stockpiling these bigger, larger items, we just kind of have our face set. We didn't know where it was going to be. We didn't know how it was going to be. I never would have dreamed in 100 years that it would be here in Lingleville, ever.
No, we were, so fast forward to 2014? 2015?
2014, that's when I left Starbucks.
2014.
Yeah.
So he had the opportunity to go into management at Starbucks. We could move to a town that's about an hour from us. And right now we live on like family farm, family land. And, but then there's this offer to do some kind of more coffee, but also mission stuff in China. And then there's this offer for a music position in Brazil. So we have these 3 places really in consideration, and we're trying to decide, and there's a lot of struggle and wrestling and like, where are we going to go? Like either way, like we got to pick, and we got to move. So where are we going to go? And we wanted to pick the right thing. And, of course, we knew that probably China was the right thing because it was the worst and hardest and scariest thing.
Yeah.
But it turns out that God's kind of cool, and he is like, I didn't ask you that, martyr. Like, why are you being such a martyr, Chelsea? And so,
why don't you just have fun?
So through a series of events, the Lord was like, actually, I want you to stay in Lingleville. And we were like, what? No. No, seriously, like.
And when we talk about hearing from the Lord, it really is like, okay, the Bible says like my sheep will recognize my voice, but it's not like an audible voice. It really is. It's more like this inner prompting. Some people would even say it's kind of like your inner conscience, I would say, but it's more like an outer conscience coming in. That's the best way I can describe it.
That's deep, man.
It is, but honestly, we're talking about like literally hearing the voice of God, and I feel like a lot of you guys are probably like, "What the heck are these people talking about? Are they crazy?" But yeah, I would say I'm either crazy. That's a valid option. I'm either crazy, or I'm just lying, or God is real and He actually speaks. And in my experience, I've learned over the years to get more and more sensitive to what His voice sounds like through saying yes to what I think it sounds like. And then I feel like he's merciful enough to say, you know what? He might have not heard me right at that time, but He tried. I'm going to make sure that I take care of Lance, because he's trying to follow me. God's not after us with a fly swatter or a magnifying glass. He's just trying to have a relationship with us. And so, so the Lord told us, hey, stay in Lingleville. This is where you're supposed to be.
But I feel like this wasn't like I have this inner prompting. This was like a series of several events that it's like, you can't miss it. Don't go to China. Don't go to Brazil. Turn down tripling your salary to do management.
We had people that didn't even know us that are like part of the church that also, hear the voice of the Lord, and they just sat us down and said, hey, I'm not sure what you're going through.
Right. Didn't know that we were considering going to China.
You were supposed to say no to this, whatever it is. And I was like, that's weird that you would even come to me and say that, because you don't even know what I'm considering right now. I never met you before. It's like, it's little things like that, big things like that the Lord was just really faithful to speak that. And so I exited the coffee scene. After I sold the roaster, left Starbucks, I was out of coffee and really out of the creative scene for a while. Kind of helped with music sometimes at the church, and that was about it. So
after that, then I really would probably consider that time like his education, because we have just had like all these kind of ventures and opportunities and everything just kind of stripped from us. And we have 3 kids.
There was a lot of opportunity on the horizon to go big.
Yeah.
To be the guy,
like the door was like boom, boom, boom.
And then the Lord was like, no, you need to move back to Lingleville.
My parents were gracious enough to, there was work, and he went on to work for them. And it was really tough because it's cattle and feedlot, and, I would say for land, like it's wasn't in his wheelhouse. There was a major learning curve. There was, he's a leader by nature. So it was so many life lessons, like learning how to serve, learning how to work for somebody, learning how to be a good neighbor. I mean, there was so many things that grew us up in that season, but for both of us, and it was good that we didn't have a business. It was good. We actually had 2 miscarriages in that season, and I think we were both in an incredibly deep pit of despair.
Yeah, it was a hard season. I was even talking to somebody about this earlier today, that I know for men and women, I know for men for sure that when you're at a job that I guess doesn't fulfill you meaningfully, that doesn't give you a lot of purpose and meaning, that doesn't fulfill a lot of a creative role, which is what I need. I need to be creative. Man, it's just like you go home and it's like, oh, like you just died inside all day. And then you get home and you're like, what is this all for? You know, every single day you're just like, it's just not rewarding. It's not fulfilling. And I think at the end of it, you have to have purpose in what you're doing. You have to have like a meaning to your work, or it's just not, it's not good. There's a lot of people who like accounting, and so they find a lot of meaning in accounting. There's a lot of people who are farmers, and they find a lot of meaning in farming. And then there's a lot of people who don't, but they get put in that role anyway. I feel like it was a big growing time for me, because I really learned how to really lean on the Lord for a lot of my meaning and purpose. But
because at the end of the day, unfortunately, you have to man up and provide for your family. You know, it's not an excuse to not go to work and
sometimes you just have to
be present.
You just have to do things that you don't want to do, and that's important that you
learn that.
You buck up and be responsible. But I think also, if you're in that situation, it's important too that you have an outlet for purpose and creativity and meaning. And so I wrote a lot of music then, a lot of music that even like I look back on today and I'm like, oh my gosh, I remember that. I remember that song. It's almost like writing a journal. I sit down with that book every once in a while and I just go through those. And I just remember all the things that the Lord did. And a lot of the stuff was just like these songs of like hope that the Lord's going to come and he's going to get us out of this season, that he's going to get me right spiritually, just because I was, struggling with some, I would say like borderline depression for sure, especially during the miscarriages. I really felt betrayed. Once you put your life in God's hands, and he doesn't promise that everything's going to go well, but for some reason you think like everything's going to go perfect. And when it doesn't, it's kind of a shock to your system, and it takes some practice to be able to say that he's good at the end of the day, even though things didn't go well. We've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of people who are going through hard things just here and there. And one thing that we've had to come to is that, whatever loss that you're suffering, whatever deep thing that you're going through, especially like with the miscarriages with us, we had to realize that it wasn't God who took our child. It was us. It was you. It was me. It was all the sin that humanity has brought into this world, and it wasn't him. I feel like, just the fact that there's this passage in the Bible, it's the shortest verse in the Bible, and it says Jesus wept. And he's weeping because his friend died, okay? And that just clues me into this whole idea that death wasn't supposed to be. In the beginning, when God created this world, there was no death. There was no sickness. There was no disease. There was no loss. And we brought the loss when we decided to say, no, there's a better way to do this,
It's the system we live in.
It's the system we live in, and death is a part of that system. Loss is a part of that system, but God's not here to say, oh, look what you did. He's here to say, hey, there's a better way. Hey, there's redemption. Hey, there's power here that can overcome this loss. And I feel like that's where we can say, even in the loss, that God is good, because he's not the one who did this. He actually wept first over the loss. He lost a lot more than what we did. He lost everything he created, but then he came back and got it back through Jesus. And that's the hope we have, in these hard situations, in this hard time in life where, we're struggling with some hard stuff. He came through to us like that, and he was always there.
That could be its own, could be a book that
I'm sure
season.
It's already a book.
But I feel like all that was just this pruning, just this shaping and refining.
Yeah.
And not that we're the people we need to be to perfectly own businesses.
But we're closer.
We're closer.
Yeah.
And
we got a lot more work to do.
those hard years, was it like 3 years? I can't remember. But it was a hard season, but it really shaped us and grew us. And so, but then it's kind of weird when you have loss, you kind of can they become markers. And so after the second miscarriage, there was just kind of this spiral for us of just real hard things. And like we said, like we love raw milk. So I milked a cow with 3 kids, and then like her calf died. And I'm like, everything dies. And then we all got lice from the dance center, and then we all got ringworm from the cats. And then I was like Job, like just picking at my sores, like what is going on,
You weren't like Job.
No, I wasn't like Job. I wasn't.
We had ringworms. We didn't have, Job probably had some ringworms.
But it was this, even in the pit of despair, there was this hope that it won't last forever. This won't last forever. And it doesn't. And it just so much felt like had been taken from us. And it was everything that was taken from us needed to be taken from us, right? Yeah. And so then the Lord was just showing me that He, I felt betrayed too. And like, why didn't you protect this baby? Like, why didn't you protect these babies? Why? And I just remember the Lord saying, I'm going to give you the desires of your heart. It was almost like I knew that my desire was to nurture and to whatever it was, and I just felt content that even though He hadn't protected that baby, He was still protecting His purpose for me, no matter what that looked like. And so had some emotional breakthrough. And then later that year, I was pregnant again with what is now our 4th child. And so I was scared, but then Lance was having some other breakthroughs too in his walk. We were pregnant in like August, and then in October, there was just this new hope that we had of like, things could be different, things can be new. And we're so different that maybe we could do it right. That's when He approached me and said, what would you think if we bought the Lingleville Country Store? So at that time, my parents owned it, and He was working for them, but not really in the store. He was doing other stuff. And so, but he would come help at the store some, and they put in pizza, and he kind of helped design the back, and he enjoyed it. When he would come and work in here and help in here, he liked it because his background was retail and Starbucks and food service. And so he was like, oh, I can do this. And he did a really good job. My parents had so many other things going on that the store was a little bit of an afterthought for them, understandably so.
A redheaded stepchild.
Yeah, because that wasn't really their wheelhouse. But I think back when they bought it, they knew it was special, and they didn't know why. But my dad was like, I'm getting it.
He's good at seeing the potential in things.
He's a visionary in a lot of ways. He's an entrepreneur, and I think that's where I get my entrepreneurial spirit from, And I feel like Lance has come into that, as we've been together too. I think you probably would have saw yourself like working at a plant or, working in a factory or doing something before. And then it was just kind of like this idea that you could have a business and run it. And anyway, so when he approached me, I was like, do it. I didn't care if he worked at a gas station. I didn't care what he did at that point.
Well, even before, when I was really in the coffee business, I thought, I want to do a shop one day. If somebody would have said you're going to have a store in Lingleville one day, I would have just laughed in their face, really, because this just shouldn't have worked. It just shouldn't have worked. That's how it is. Even the shop in Dublin, it shouldn't have worked. But I feel like because we had this supernatural direction where we were surrendered to whatever the Lord wanted, He said, hey, like, you're going to have a shop in Lingleville. And I was like, yeah, that must just be me. Yeah, that's the inner conscience, not the outer conscience. And then as things kind of progressed, they had some turmoil here with employees and stuff, and really this place was pretty bare bones. You could come in and get like a soda and a bag of chips. It was rough. It had a lot to be desired.
But it had a lot of potential.
Yeah, it had a lot of potential. They didn't have like a interview process or anything like that as far as bringing people in. So they had some people here who I feel like, could have been better picks. They ran into some trouble with folks, and they ended up having to fire a few people. They were just short on labor, and they were like, I'm done with this place. We need to close it. And I remember we're on a family vacation to California to go see her grandma, and I'm driving the rental car, and everybody's in the car with me, and they get the call, and they're talking, and they're just stressed out, and I just said, hey, why don't you sell that place to me, and we'll just buy it from y'all. And they sat there for a sec, and they were like, okay, let's talk about it when we get back. And I was like, this is about to happen. So yeah, we got this killer agreement with them where, we would just run it for so long. And then once it kind of got on its feet and started making money, we would buy it. And yeah, the rest was history. I brought my espresso machine and my home set up here, and it's still there right now. And I just started making coffee from, 7 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock.
6 to 2.
And
because we didn't have baristas for the afternoon shift.
Yeah.
Like we kept some of the employees that worked here, we kept and trained, and then and then we slowly got more people in. So we opened in February, and then we had our little grant in May, and it was just like a whole season.
Grant's our fourth kiddo.
Yeah, our rainbow baby. And so it was just like a whole season of new life. It's been really, really a blessing. And there are hard things about owning a business, but if we ever just get in a rut with it, or frustrated, or we're short on help, or our prices have gone up, these vendors are changing things, or just all the little headaches. It's like, if we'll just sit down, and we're pretty good to do this with each other, it's just like, remember what God did? Like, remember all the stuff God did? Like, what do we do with that? Like, yeah. And so we keep on trucking with it.
Yeah, and we're really blessed to have some really good people working for us.
We have the best employees.
We try to take really good care of them.
People are like, you can't find good help. And we're just like, yeah. Yeah, I know.
You can't.
Don't come looking at my store. But we're keeping up forever.
I feel like there's good people to be had out there. You just try to make sacrifices for them if you can.
So what is something that you would tell your 20-year-old self that you know now that you didn't know? What advice would you give your 20-year-old self starting out in business? Well,
I feel like the things that I chose got me here, and I like where I'm at. And so I guess what I would tell my 20-year-old self is say no to more fun things and say yes to some of the more responsible things. Don't go through that season that caused so much chaos, in your marriage. Have a deeper commitment to your family.
And to be fair, it was rough on our marriage, but it was rough on your health too. Like, it wasn't, I wasn't just like over here like you were having some health issues, some like chronic fatigue.
I feel like I was really overdoing it, and I feel like my adrenals are tapped. So there came a time where they had another Starbucks about an hour from us that was having some serious issues. They had like a whole team of people that just walked out. And so they pulled all these other employees from other stores to go to that store and kind of fill in the gaps until they got things, on their feet. And I was one of those employees that they sent. So I would drive an hour every single day and just work like an 8-hour shift there. So and this store was insanely busy. So from the time that I arrived, which I'd usually get there around 7 o'clock, there was a line around the building, and I would make drinks for 2 hours and I would run 2 espresso machines by myself. So I would steam milk and pull shots on 2 of the super autos, and there was just a line of cups for 2 hours. And then they would send me on a 10-minute break, and I would go like deflate for for 10 minutes, and then I would turn around and do it for another 2 hours. And the whole time I'm like 5-hour energy and espresso shots. I was probably drinking like maybe 12 ounces of espresso a day in this span of 8 hours. And in the morning on the way to work, I'd get gas and I'd get a 5-hour energy. So I didn't realize that that was a bad thing, but it's a really bad thing. Yeah, but it kept me going. It kept me going.
We also had 2 kids at that time.
Yeah, and I was losing
Didn't sleep through the night.
I was losing a lot of sleep.
He was an infant.
So I was trying to help her as much as I could too during the night, and lack of sleep, and then just like super stress work. So it was like 2 hours of making drinks, 10-minute break, 2 hours of making drinks, 30-minute break, 2 hours of making drinks, 10-minute break, 2 hours of making drinks, go home. And it just never stopped. And it was wild. And then it took me an hour to get there and an hour to get back. So it ended up being like a 10 or 11 hour day at the end of it. And I remember making drinks. One time it was like into the afternoon, so I was getting like towards the end of my shift. I'm drinking espresso, and my heart just starts going nuts inside of me. And in my mind, I'm thinking, what's wrong with me? And my hands start like shivering.
Probably not the 5-hour energy.
And I was like, what's going on? Like my body is like freaking out right now. And I was just like, I gotta go take a break. And so I told whoever's in charge, like, hey, I gotta sit down for a sec. Something's happening. Yeah, I guess I had like a panic attack. I don't even know what that was, but in my mind, I was fine. But my body was like, I can't keep doing this. And I think ever since then, it's just I've been like I gotta be really careful on how much load I take on as far as work. Ever since then, because I'll just get sick. I'll get like really sick really fast. So it's just, I think it's my body's way of just pumping the brakes a little bit. Like, hey, you're not Superman. You can't go like that. So yeah, that was a big change in life.
You know, when you're going to open a store or you want to start a business, don't sacrifice your family, your marriage, your health. Like those things are all
There's bigger
important
things.
And need to take top priority over your new business.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and I even tell like, you know, the guys that I have working for me now, you know, they'll be shooting energy drinks and drinking coffee and not sleeping at night. And I'm just like, man, you got to take care of yourself, you know? Like, it doesn't last. You can't do that into your 30s. You just can't. Once you get 30, you're going to realize the gig's up. You know, you can't keep going. You got to sleep. And so, yeah, that's something really important is don't get in over your head as far as work goes. Don't feel like you have to work like 100 hours a week when you first open. You know, find some good help, find some people to help you, and make sure that you're really taking the time that you need to take a break.
Yeah, setting some boundaries.
Even if it's not being open 7 days a week, maybe you need to close a day and just like take the whole day and be very disciplined to actually rest, because your body needs it. If you're gonna go those 6 days, you've got to have that other day to chill and to look forward to.
So is that your advice that you'd give your 20-year-old self? Yeah,
I think that would be it. Like, don't overwork yourself, especially, you know, the money was good. I got paid good for that.
But where is it now?
But it's gone now. You know, it's money, you know, and I can't get, you know, what I left over there back. So I'd say don't overdo it. That's good advice. Good advice, Chelsea. That's what Chelsea would give my 20-year-old self. Good advice.
I think
what would you
I was telling a younger person, like really eager to start a business, I would say to be patient. Like to make sure that it's like, it's ripe.
Yeah.
You know, like each thing takes a certain time to like ripen. And when it's ripe, it's sweet. But when it's not, it's sour. And it's like, I think that you can have a dream like out on the horizon or a promise or just this gut feeling that this is going to be your thing or that you're going to have this thing. But like, if you have to like bite and claw and scratch to get it, then it might not be ripe, right? Because when it's ripe, it'll fall from the tree.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it'll be sweet.
Yeah, it comes off really sour when you force it or if you go early. I mean, it'll ripen on the counter, but it's never as good. And if you eat it early, it's not worth it. Yeah, that's a really good word, is to be patient. I feel like with this place, we were really patient. With Blackjacks, we were really patient. It's just kind of opening your hands and holding it like this to say, if this is something that's supposed to happen, then it'll happen and it won't get snatched away from me. You know? And not grabbing it and holding it so tight that when it's supposed to not be there, it's there, you know? There's a golden opportunity that awaits, you know, and sometimes you have to wait for it. Sometimes you can make it happen, but I feel like forcing it isn't something that we've done. It's just it's always presented itself to us. The right people have come into our lives. We've prayed about it, and it's just developed. Even what the store is today, all of this. It's really developed very organically. I don't feel like we've really pushed it. Even now, like we're just kind of getting on the social media train. I feel like, you know, and that's something that Jared brought to us, you know, that's something that he did. But I feel like taking it slow and steady has really allowed us to do things right, to not get overwhelmed, and to say no when we needed to say no. And develop the things that people actually want. And so if I throw a bunch of stuff out there and I force it on people, then a lot of the stuff's not going to work. But because we've taken it so slow, it's really just a lot of word of mouth has spread. You know, I didn't get this huge influx of customers.
When we only had like one employee per shift.
When it was only me, so it's been a good ride. It's been a nice, slow, steady growth. And now that, you know, we're ready to grow, we're prepared for it. You know, we're doing more outreach, letting people know we're here, you know, just growing a little bit more intentionally. So yeah, that's how we got here. I feel like there's going to be a lot more of this story to kind of roll out. And I feel like, you know, I've already shared a lot of the story on other podcasts and places like that. So if you look up, you know, our name and Lingleville Country Store, you can probably find some other podcasts too. Shout out to those guys because they're awesome. And thanks for coming chatting with me, baby.
Anytime.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for checking in with us. Thanks for being on Coffee Snob. Thanks for checking us out on Facebook. And hey, if you're around Lingleville and you're not familiar with the area, come out and see us because we're here and we want to meet you. We'll see you in Lingleville. Thanks. Hey guys, if y'all wanna support us and you wanna have some cool merch from Coffee Snob, if you wanna represent, we got these cool shirts. Coffee Snob, the Lingleville Country Store. We sell them here. We sell them on the website. Go check it out. And
check it out in the description.
Check it out in the description below. Just getting used to this YouTube podcast thing. So, and make sure to subscribe and like. We'll see you later.